and welcome to another of my series of videos about working with crafting USBs and CDs and DVD-ROMs, where you can print out your own papers and toppers, and it's about foiling your own toppers and creating basically your own foiled card kit. The sorts of thing I've been doing is like this, and what I've done is I've used my nesting cutting dies to foil around the edge of some of the papers and the toppers of my sentiment to make my own foiled card kit. So that was one I did, and this was one of the other ones, as you can see, completely different shape, and that one I added some more foiling on this layer and this layer. So I'm not just working with the backs of cutting dies, you can bring all your foiling goodies into this, and be your own designer really. So for some of this I used hot foil plates, and for some of it I used the backs of cutting dies. The one I'm going to do today, I'm back to using just cutting dies, but I wanted to do one where you've got a die cut frame that's a decorative die cut frame, with bits cut out and makes a nice pattern. So I'm going to be using a tonic die, and it's their ribbon and bows layering die set, and it's a huge die set. I think you could make an 8x8 card at least with it, and it starts that big and it comes all the way down to little dies like this. Okay, so what we do to create our foiled edge, and I've used the bigger of the dies that I'm using today to create this one, is we use the back of the cutting die. Now the important thing about the cutting dies, get the camera to focus, is that the cutting edge, I'm going to zoom in as well, let me just put my hand behind there, and that's it. The cutting edge, as you can see on this one, is in the middle of the supporting sort of frame, okay, and that's quite important for getting the right pressure when we want to foil. Okay, so that's what we're going to do, and I'll say that's what it's going to produce. Wrong way. That's what it's going to produce, and that's going to be cut out in a minute, and I'm going to show you how I did this. The CD that I'm working with for this one is a Creative Crafting World CD, and it's Pollyanna Pickering's Majestic Cats, and I've printed one of the decoupage sheets to make my topper from, and I've printed a selection of the backing papers, and I've already made up a card blank with those matted onto there, so that's all ready to go. And I need to show you, oh, of course it doesn't have, whatever shape you've got. So there's my fancy squares, there's my plain squares. So as I say, whatever shapes you've got, I'll put those to one side, along with those. So my GoPress and foil, now you're going to need 2 thin metal shims. I've got one on my GoPress and foil with it warming up, but these are the sort of metal shims that you use with your die cutting machine. If you're going to be cutting fabric, perhaps using mixed media dies, or perhaps if you've got a particularly intricate die that you need that extra pressure for. So this is only 0.5 millimetre thick, so it's a thin metal shim, you can bend it. It's not the Couture Creations conversion plate, which is much thicker. Okay, it's a thin metal shim. Okay, so I'm using 2 of those, and I'll show you what I do with that in a moment. So I need my topper, and I'm just going to cut one of these out of the sheet. Okay, so this will be foiled with the next size die down. Okay, it's going to be kind of foiled around that area. Now to do this, I need to cut my foil to the right shape and size. And the foil that I used for the larger size, I cut the middle out of it. Now that stops foil from getting onto the centre of the piece of card where you don't want it. It wouldn't probably really mattered for that, because it's going to be covered up with the central topper. But it means I've got this piece of foil left. So I'm going to put that down on the self-healing mat. And then I'm going to take my die and I'm going to tape it down, and I'm going to trim it a bit closer to the edges as well. And that helps me see what I'm doing when I'm positioning it. I'm taping it down so it doesn't move when I'm trying to cut with my craft knife. So you don't need much pressure to cut, and I'm going to cut around the middle a few millimeters, maybe an eighth of an inch or so from the edge of the die. And let me just move the camera so you can see what I'm doing a bit better. Straighten the camera. There. Zoom in a bit. There, so you can see I've got that taped down. And I'm just going to take some more of this excess off from around the outside, and that just makes it easier for me to tape it down. Both while I'm trimming it and when I want to tape it to my piece of card that my topper's on. Now you could also do this with pre-printed, pre-cut topper sheets, as long as you've got a die that's slightly smaller than the one that's been used to pre-cut it. I'm just going to move that piece of tape because it's too far over. Yeah. Okay, so it's going around the inside, as I say, just a 2 or 3 millimeters, or approximately an eighth of an inch from the inside edge of the die. Doesn't matter if your line's a bit wiggly. And if you need to, move your die to make it easier to cut. Okay, don't try and sort of twist your hand round. And you might want to put some more tape at this end. It's up to you. This is only a small die, so it's quite easy for me to hold it still while I'm cutting. There, so now I've got that piece of foil left, and I will use that later for doing my sentiment. Okay, so now I need to take my topper . I'm going to lift the die, move it out of the way, and position my foil. And I can put my die back over the top. And when you're looking to make sure it's straight, make sure you're looking at the die and not your foil, because your foil edge might not be straight. So I think I want it maybe up a little bit. Yeah, and then tape it down. Now I can bring my GoPress and foil over. And I need some shims. Now obviously I've been doing quite a lot of this lately, so I've kind of worked out what's the right pressure for to use with my die cutting machine and the foils and the dies that I'm using. So you might need a different number of shims. So I've got another of my thin metal shims on here, it's been warming up, and I put this with the die cutting edge up, okay, and the heat's going to come through the card, through the foil, and then the die is going to push down from the top, okay. So then I want my other metal shim over the top. Oh, I'm going to use my big shims rather than those, because that's easier when you can't see where the die is. Come on. So my shims are just a piece of 250 GSM card. It's an A4 card folded in half, so that's 2 layers. And then I've got another piece, so that's 4 layers altogether. And the 250 GSM card is what I would normally make toppers out of. I'd use slightly heavier, I'd use 300 GSM for a card blank, to give you some idea what weight of card I'm using. If your card's slightly thinner, you might need an extra shim. If you're using slightly heavier card, you might only need 3. You might only need 3 anyway. It's something you need to try out, and it's probably best to try it perhaps with smaller dies, so that you're not using too much card and foil while you're testing. So having put that on, my GoPress and foil needs to come back to temperature, and I need time for the card and the die to warm up. Okay, so while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to cut the foil for my sentiment. Now I think I'm going to do the sentiment on a piece of black card in a minute, but I can get the foil ready and then decide that later. So once again, so I've got my piece of foil, and once again I'm going to cut the middle out, and then that will leave me, I can even do it that way around, a piece of foil big enough to actually foil the sentiment in the middle of it in a minute. So I'm just going to leave my GoPress and foil, it's just cut, the green light's just come on, but I'm going to leave it until it's gone back to heating, and then come back again to ready. So trimming the foil, again around the outside is really just to make it easier to stick it down. And then taking the outside out, the inside of the foil out. So I'm not worrying about all the little detailed lumps and bumps around the edge on this one. I'm just doing it quite straight lines. There we are, so that's done. And I'm going to leave that stuck to my mat to keep it safe while I carry on. And the other job I need to do is to cut this with my dies. So let's do that. So I need my outside edge, and that goes directly over the top of the foiling. I'm going to take that down in a couple of places. And then I'm going to use the detail die from the set. I'm going to need some more tape, and then I'm going to take that down as well. Now I do find it's quite a good idea, I'm going to take that out of it, to actually, once I've taped it down, turn it round and make sure it still looks like I've got my die in the right place. So I think that's okay for this one. So now I'm going to put the detail one in. So this is just normal die cutting. So that's ready. Let's just run that through the die cutting machine. Yep. It's everywhere. Lift this out the die, and there's just a few bits need poking out. So there we have foil around the edge and that beautiful delicate lace pattern cut in. So that's that. Now I need to run my GoPress foil through the die cutting machine. Let's just turn that so you can see what I'm doing. It is quite a firm pressure. It's similar to when I'm die cutting. Okay, so let's see how we've got on. So I immediately put the base, the platform back on the base so that it stays at temperature. Now, I'm not going to just rip all this off. I'm going to look one end and then the other to see if my foiling's worked. Now, obviously, you've got a die cutting edge here, so it has cut through my tape. So I want to make sure the other end is stuck down. And then I'm just, sorry, move the camera back. Okay, so I've just removed one piece of tape at this end, and I'm just lifting up the die a little bit to see if it looks like the foil is stuck, and it does look as if it's stuck. Try and get the camera to focus on that. Let me try around. Let me bring the camera around to me a bit more. That's better. Okay, so you can see there, you can see a line where the foil is stuck, and then I'm just going to very gently put my nail under the foil and start it peeling to see if it's actually foiled. And I can see the line there. Sorry, this is really difficult to get the right angle. So if I just lift the foil up, you can see I've got the foil on the card. So that looks really lovely at that end. Well, I'm not going to get too excited. I'm going to take that end back down, and I'm going to have a look at the other end. So take the other piece of tape off. And again, lift the die and have a look, because sometimes you can just see at that stage that it hasn't. In which case you can tape it back down and heat it and roll it again, and then I'm going to lift the foil and look, and I can see I've got a lovely line there. So now I can take all my tape off, and I've got my foiling on there. Okay, and then all I need to do is line up my die and cut it out. So I've got some bits of tape left on my die. You see there? Yeah. So it's important that you take those off, because otherwise when you die cut they'll leave an impression in the foil. So even when you poke it or your fingernail, just get those off. Okay, and then the die goes over the top. And I can use my bits of tape again. And then that needs to be die cut. Now, to protect my topper, it's getting a bit scruffy, I'm just using a piece of copy paper on top of my bottom cutting mat, and then I'm putting it face down on it. It's up to you. It's your die cutting machine, and whatever preferences you have. And there is our foil topper. So we're getting there. So now I need some foam pads to mount that in the centre of there. Obviously how much dimension you put in is up to you. Let me just bring the card blank back. Obviously I haven't got any foam pads at all, but that's going to go something like that. Okay, so the next thing I need is my sentiment. So I've got my foil ready, hadn't I? I just need to get some black card. So I'm just going to cut some from here. So remember, I cut the foil to size. So in fact I'm going to foil this, and then I'm going to leave die cutting it until I've added the sentiment. For that reason I'm going to do it that way round. make sure my sentiment's going to fit. Yep. I want to get this straight, just it's going to be more convenient for the next bit. Right, so let's tape that down. Now I'm leaving the card big and it's got a nice straight end, and that is to make putting the actual word of the sentiment on easier in a minute or two. So you'll see why when I do that. So exactly the same, it goes onto the GoPress. It goes onto the GoPress with the cutting edge facing upwards. And then the second metal shim. And then my shims. Exactly the same as before. Okay, and I'm going to leave that to warm up. So while that is warming up, I'm going to get my topper mounted on my card, and then I'm going to come back to you. Okay, so that's just come out of the GoPress and foil, so that's ready, nicely foiled. I'm just going to look under each side. Yep, that's fine. So don't forget to do that, because otherwise you'll, so it's quite easy to get excited. The foil's moved anyway, so sometimes that happens. So let's hope for the best. Yeah, so I've got a nice foiled frame. Okay, so that is where my sentiment's going to go, but I'm not going to cut it out yet because it will make it easier for foiling the sentiment if I don't. So what I need to do is position my sentiment on my GoPress and foil so it'll end up in the right place. Oh, and I stuck that down on the card. So I've put it kind of slightly high, sort of in the top left, towards the top left corner, and I've used foam pads under both layers, so you've got all that dimension and the beautiful foiling. So for this, I'm going to use a magnet to hold that in place. So I've got, these are the sorts of magnets you use with a stamp press. I think they're about 2 centimetres across, probably about 1.5 centimetres thick. Doesn't have to be precise. So that kind of magnet, a neodymium magnet, okay, in a size not too small. So, and I've covered them in some thick, some broad masking tape, or or you can use several pieces of masking tape, so that I've got a handle on them and I can easily grab them to pick them up. So that goes on the back. So that goes on the back, and that holds that in place, and I can adjust the position a bit after I put the magnet on to make sure it's straight. And I think about there will do. And then I need my GoPress and foil. Now I don't want the metal shim on it anymore, so I'm going to take that off. What I'm going to do, I know I haven't got any foil on this yet, that's fine. I'm going to put this in place. I'm going to line up with the one there at the bottom edge, and then I'm going to slide my finger underneath, and I can hold my hot foil stamp down and slide the magnet off, but you don't leave your finger there too long. Okay, and then take the card out of the way, and then you can heat up your hot foil stamp. That shouldn't take very long to heat. And then I've got my piece of foil here that I took out the middle that I can use to foil my sentiment. So from that big piece of foil I started with, that I used to foil the outside of this one, I've also foiled that one, the frame for my sentiment and the sentiment. So I've not been cutting lots of extra pieces of foil, just been making good use of the same one. So it's only a little sentiment. That should be warm enough now. So now I add my foil. I'm putting it the other way around, it doesn't matter. Lining up with the one on the edge and taping it to the edge. Okay, then I'm going to add, I think probably 2 shims will be enough for this little sentiment. And then I'm going to put it straight through the die cutting machine because it hasn't had time to cool down. Now, if you find you've taken it out and you know you've had some sort of delay because you've had to reposition things or needed to cut another piece of foil, that kind of thing, then obviously put it back on the base unit to make sure it's hot before you actually run it through your die cutting machine. So there it is. Let's peel off the foil. And there's my sentiment. I've used one that says just for you. You might be stamping and heat embossing a sentiment if you haven't got lots of hot foil stamp sentiments. So you can do that as well. It won't harm your foiling if you heat emboss onto it afterwards. So now I need my die. I need to make sure I've got my bits of tape off. Then take my die down. Then piece of paper just to protect the surface of my foiling. There we are. When you do this, it does of course leave a forward aperture, so that's something you also might like to experiment with. It can be a bit fiddlier to work with apertures than layering up die cuts, but there's that option as well. So now I need to finish my card. Now I've also got somewhere on this table a selection of flowers and embellishments for this card that I've made ahead of time. So I'm going to put my Just For You down in the corner, I think. Shall I put it up there? Let's see where the embellishments want to go first. And these are just sort of various dies from my stash. I've got a nice big flower. Go down there maybe. Oh, I've got butterflies as well. So if I'm going to go there, what do I want to overlap? Yeah, I think I want to overlap it. And if I go there, yeah, it's more balanced there, I think. Balances out the flowers. And I can put some butterflies on. There and there. I've got some leaves. And I've just kind of done this to tone in with the I think it's rosemary that the cat's sitting next to. And there's kind of shaped flowers that are on the pattern paper. Oh, there. Not sure I'm going to use that one. So I shall stick these down and then come back at the end and show you the finished card. Okay, so I've stuck down my flowers and my butterflies and my sentiment just in the corner here. So here's my finished card. So that's the, as I say, I've used the Tonic ribbons and bows layering die set, and it's CD from Creative Crafting World, Pollyanna Pickering's Majestic Cats. Obviously you could be using these ideas with any toppers, any CDs, any topper pads you've got, and you know, whatever backing papers you've got. It doesn't have to be any specific kits. I'm just trying to give you some ideas. Okay, thank you very much for watching.